The battlefield was quiet now, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of death. Broken machines lay across the black soil, their wires sparking faintly in the night. The smell of smoke and burned metal clung to the air. No birds sang. No wind moved the dust. It was a graveyard made from war. A lone human soldier walked carefully among the wrecks. His uniform was torn, his armor dented. Blood stained his arm, but he moved with steady steps. He was tired, so very tired, yet something deep inside him refused to stop. He had survived the battle, but he could not feel victory. All he felt was emptiness. He thought he was alone in this place. Then he heard it, a sound, soft at first, almost swallowed by the stillness. Not the crackle of fire, not the moan of twisted steel. It was a cry. The soldier froze. His heart quickened. He listened. Again it came, faint but sharp, trembling with pain. It was not a sound meant for him. It was a sound born from grief. Followed it, each step crunching over ash and shattered glass. The cry led him toward the broken hull of a crashed alien transport ship. Its metal sides were torn open like the ribs of a dying beast. The smell from within was heavy, and the air carried a strange hum of energy. The soldier tightened his grip on his weapon. He knew what kind of ship this was. He knew what he might find inside. For years, these beings had been enemies, fierce, merciless, deadly. He had fought them on countless fields, had watched comrades fall to their blades. To him, they were monsters. And yet the cry was not the cry of a monster. It was the cry of someone who had lost everything. With slow steps, he entered the wreck. The inside was dark. Sparks flickered weakly from broken panels, painting the walls with brief flashes of light. In the center of the ruin, half hidden by shadows, something large shifted. The soldier raised his weapon. Then he saw her, the alien queen. Her crown-like head was lowered, her tall body bent with weakness. Her once mighty frame, feared across the stars, now looked broken. Scars ran along her arms, fresh wounds glistened, and her breathing was shallow. She did not rise to fight. She did not roar. She trembled. The soldier's chest tightened. He had seen her kind in battle, leading armies with terrifying strength. But here she was not a commander, not a monster. She was something else. Through a broken translator on the floor, her voice cracked into the air. It was filled with static, broken words, but the meaning was clear enough. My child. Lost. The soldier's breath caught. He lowered his weapon slightly, uncertain. He looked at her eyes, alien, glowing faintly, yet wet with something he had never thought he would see. Tears. She spoke again, weaker this time. Taken. Stolen. My child. Gone. The human stared at her. This was the queen, the enemy, the cause of so many battles, so many dead. And yet in this ruined place she was not an enemy. She was a mother. His mind fought itself. One voice screamed at him to leave, to turn away, to remember the blood that had been spilled. Another voice whispered that the sound of a grieving mother was the same in every world, in every species. He remembered then his own past. A memory long buried rose before his eyes, his little sister taken by raiders when he was a boy. The night. He had searched the ruins of his home, calling her name, waiting for help that never came. The emptiness of knowing no one would bring her back. He knew that pain. And now he saw it in her. The queen's claws shook as she pressed them against the floor. Her body trembled with weakness, but her eyes did not look away from him. In them he saw not power, not hate, but pleading. The battlefield around them was still. For a long moment neither spoke, only the faint sound of her broken breathing, and the crackle of dying flames filled the air. Finally, the human lowered his weapon fully. His voice was quiet, almost unsure, but steady enough to carry meaning. "You want me to help you?" The queen did not nod. She did not need to. Her silence was answer enough. The soldier closed his eyes for a brief second. When he opened them, he had made his choice. The war, the hatred, the blood, it all seemed so far away now. Here, in this wreck of steel and sorrow, there was only one truth. A mother had lost her child, and he could not walk away. The soldier stood in the broken ship, staring at the queen. His mind was torn in two directions. One part screamed that she was the enemy, the reason why so many of his people lay dead across the stars. Another part whispered that what he saw before him was not an enemy. It was a mother begging for her child. Her body was broken, her strength almost gone, yet her eyes burned with desperate hope. She looked at him as if he was the last light left in a world full of shadows. The soldier felt uneasy under that gaze. He had seen hatred in alien eyes before. He had seen rage and fire, but never this, never sorrow, never pleading. The translator crackled again. Her voice was faint, heavy with pain, but clear enough. "My child. Taken. Raiders. Chains." She coughed, her body shaking, then forced more words through. "No one will help me. No one. But you." The soldier's hand tightened around his weapon. Why her? Why him? This was madness. She was their queen. She had led armies against Earth's. Soldiers had ordered attacks that cost countless human lives. He should walk away. He should let fate finish what the war had started. And yet, he did not move. In her trembling voice, he heard something he could not ignore. It was not the voice of a leader. It was not the voice of an enemy. It was the voice of a mother who had lost the only thing that mattered to her. He tried to harden his heart. He told himself this was not his problem, but memories rose up from deep inside, memories he had buried long ago. He saw his sister's face, smiling in the sunlight, before. The raiders came. He heard her cry as they dragged her away, small hands reaching out to him as he was held back. He had screamed for help, but no one came. No one had saved her. That pain had never left him. It lived in his chest, a wound that no war could ever heal. And now, in the eyes of the queen, he saw that same pain. He lowered his weapon slowly. His voice came out rough, uncertain, but honest. "Why me?" The queen did not answer with words. She simply looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with trust she had no right to give. Trust that he would understand. Trust that he would not walk away. The silence between them stretched, heavy as stone. The soldier felt his chest tighten. He had spent his whole life fighting, killing, surviving. But this was different. This was not war. This was something deeper. He whispered, almost to himself. "You want me to bring her back?" The queen's claws scraped weakly against the floor. Her body was too broken to rise, too weak to follow. But her eyes did not leave his. They said everything she could not. Yes. Bring her back. The soldier turned away for a moment, staring out at the ruined battlefield. Smoke still rose into the night sky. The war had taken so much from both sides. Maybe it was still taking. But in that silence, he felt a strange clarity. He remembered how it felt to be helpless. He remembered how it felt to call for help and receive none. And he remembered the promise he had made long ago to himself, that if he ever had the chance, he would never let another feel that same pain. Slowly, he looked back at her. His voice was steady this time, low but firm. "I'll bring her back." The queen's body shook as she breathed in sharply. Her claws dug into the floor as if holding onto those words. Tears glistened in her alien eyes. She did not speak, but she did not need to. The gratitude in her gaze was louder than any words. The soldier felt a weight settle on his shoulders. The task was almost impossible. Raiders in the wasteland were ruthless, dangerous, and merciless. He would be walking into death itself, alone, but he could not take back his words. And deep inside, he did not want to. For the first time in years, his fight was not for survival, not for orders, not for war. It was for something far greater. It was for a child who had been stolen. It was for a mother who had lost hope. He stepped back from the wreck, the queen's desperate eyes following him. The air outside was cold, filled with the scent of ash. He tightened his grip on his weapon, not with hatred this time, but with determination. He would go into the wasteland. He would find the raiders. He would face whatever waited there, because no mother should be left without her child. The soldier left the ruined ship behind him. The queen's eyes remained in his mind, burning like two lanterns in the dark. He had promised her something that seemed impossible, and yet his heart felt heavier at the thought of failing than at the danger ahead. The land stretched before him like a wasteland carved by war. The ground was black, scarred by craters where bombs had fallen. Metal bones of broken ships rose from the earth like monuments of despair. Rivers that once gave life now ran with oil and ash. It was a world torn apart, and he was walking straight into its heart. The raiders were clever. They always hid in places where no one wished to follow, places of fire, shadow, and death. To find them, he had to read the land like an old book. He bent down often, studying the ground. Footprints pressed into the dirt, broken branches, the faint drag of chains, signs of a group moving with prisoners. The child was alive. That was enough for him. Days stretched into one another. The soldier walked under a sky that never cleared. Smoke and dust veiled the stars at night, while the sun in the day was a dull red disk, weak and distant. His legs ached, his wounds throbbed, his throat burned from thirst, but still he pressed on. At night he built small fires, tiny sparks of warmth in a world of ruin. The flames reminded him of home, of evenings when his family gathered around a hearth. Those memories cut deep, but they also gave him strength. He whispered to the flames as if they could carry his words to the child he searched for. "Hold on, I'm coming." He thought often of the queen. He pictured her sitting in the broken ship, waiting, her claws trembling as she held her breath for news. He imagined her pain, the same pain he had once felt when his sister was taken. That memory never left him, and now it was like a fire in his chest, driving him forward. The wasteland tested him at every step. Storms of ash swept over the plains, blinding him. He crossed rivers of black water where the bridges had collapsed, forcing him to wade through cold currents that clawed at his wounds. He climbed cliffs of broken stone, his hands raw and bleeding by the time he pulled himself to the top. Each hardship whispered the same cruel thought. "Turn back. You cannot do this." But each time he shook his head. Turning back meant leaving the child in chains. Turning back meant letting the queen's cry go unanswered. He refused. He would not be the man who walked away. On the fourth night, as he camped beneath a broken tower, he heard voices in the distance. They were rough, mocking, cruel, the voices of raiders. His heart pounded as he crept closer, hiding in the shadows. Through cracks in the stone, he saw the glow of their fires. Shapes moved around the flames, armored in scraps of stolen metal. They laughed loudly, boasting of their spoils. And there, in the middle of them all, he saw a small figure chained to a post, the child. Her body was small, her head lowered in exhaustion. But she was alive. He saw her chest rise and fall with weak breaths. Even from far away, he could feel the fear in her, like a trembling flame that refused to die. The soldier's hands clenched into fists. His whole body shook, not with fear, but with something deeper, a fierce will. He had found her. Now he had to get her out. He slipped back into the shadows, heart racing. One man against so many raiders was madness. Their weapons were sharp, their laughter cruel, their greed endless. He knew the risk, he knew the cost, but he also knew this: the child had no one else. If he failed, she would vanish into darkness. Forever, he whispered to himself, voice low but strong. If not me, then who? The wasteland was silent around him. The stars above were hidden, but he felt as if they listened. He tightened his grip on his weapon, steadying his breath. His path was clear. He would wait for night's deepest hour. He would strike like a shadow. He would fight, bleed, and fall, if he had to. Because somewhere far away, a mother waited in silence, her heart breaking, and he had sworn to bring her child back. The soldier crouched low in the shadows, his body pressed against cold stone. The firelight of the raiders flickered not far ahead, painting cruel shapes across the wasteland. Laughter rose from the camp, hard, sharp laughter that carried no warmth. These were men who lived only by taking, who found joy in chains and fear. The soldier's breath was steady, but his heart beat like a drum. His eyes stayed fixed on the small figure bound at the center of the camp, the child. She looked so fragile in the glow of the flames. Her arms were thin, her back bent forward in exhaustion. Chains clung to her wrists and ankles, cruel metal biting into her skin. Her head hung low, but every now and then she stirred, as if still fighting sleep, still refusing to give up. That spark of life cut through the soldier's chest like a blade. She was alone in a sea of monsters. He knew that feeling too well. The helplessness, the weight of chains, the silence of waiting for someone who might never come. He remembered his sister again, remembered her cries echoing through the night, as raiders dragged her away. He remembered standing powerless, too small, too weak, while she reached for him. He had carried that memory like a scar inside his soul. Now, here he was, facing the same scene. But this time he was no child. This time he could fight. The raiders were many. They moved with swagger, their stolen armor clinking, their blades gleaming in the firelight. They passed around stolen food and drink, laughing at the misery of their captives. These were men who had killed without care, who had taken without mercy. The soldier counted them quietly. 10, maybe more. Too many for one man. His body was tired, his wounds still raw, and his weapon was not built for battles like this. Logic whispered that he should turn back, wait for reinforcements, or abandon the task. But logic had no place here. He looked at the child again. Her small hands twitched against the chains. Her head lifted just slightly, her glowing eyes faint, but alive. She was holding on, waiting, though she did not know for what. His chest tightened. He could not let her wait in vain. The night deepened. The fire burned lower, the raiders growing louder in their drunken joy. Some drifted toward sleep, helmets resting against the ground. Others leaned back, careless, boasting of battles and stolen treasures. The soldier's fingers brushed the grip of his weapon. He knew what he had to do. It was madness, but it was the only path. He whispered softly to himself, a reminder, a vow. She waits for me. I cannot fail. He slipped, closer, using the darkness as his shield. Every step was careful, every breath controlled. His boots touched the ground like feathers, silent against stone and ash. The camp grew larger before him. The fire, the tents of patched cloth, the weapons stacked carelessly to one side. The smell of smoke mixed with the stench of unwashed. men closer now. His eyes never left the child. Her head lifted suddenly, weak but searching. For a moment, their eyes met across the fire. She blinked, confusion flashing across her face. Then hope. He raised one finger to his lips, a quiet signal. She stilled, as if she understood. That small exchange gave him strength. She believed. He could not let her belief be wasted. The soldier's heart thundered, his muscles tensed. This was it. The edge between life and death, between failure and promise. 10 men against 1, shadows against fire, fear against will. He whispered again, this time not just to himself, but to the night, to the queen waiting far away, to the child chained before him. If not me, then who? He shifted his grip on the weapon. His jaw tightened. The camp before him was alive with danger, but his soul felt sharper than any blade. He would strike soon. He would bring fire to their laughter, silence to their cruelty. He would fight not for orders, not for war, but for something far greater. For a child who should never have known chains. For a mother who wept alone in the dark. The soldier steadied, his breath, eyes glowing with determination. The moment of battle was near, and the night itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the storm he was about to unleash. The night grew colder as the soldier crouched in the shadows. His breath came slow, steady, like the calm before a storm. The raiders laughed loudly around their fire, their voices sharp and careless. They did not know death had already entered their camp, wearing the face of one weary man. The child was still chained at the center, her eyes half closed, her small body weak. But when she looked up and saw him, a faint light stirred in her gaze. Hope. The soldier's grip tightened on his weapon. He felt fear pressing against his chest, but he pushed it aside. Fear was nothing compared to the thought of leaving her in chains. The moment came. He moved. Like a shadow, he slipped from the dark and struck. The first raider never had time to scream, just a quick gasp before silence swallowed him. The others turned, confusion flashing across their drunken faces, but then steel clashed and the camp filled with chaos. The soldier fought like a man who carried more than his own life. His strikes were sharp, fast, desperate. Each movement burned with purpose. The raiders shouted, blades rising, weapons clashing, but he did not stop. He was outnumbered, wounded, and tired. Yet something stronger than fear held him upright. Every cry from the child, every rattle of her chains, fueled his body with fire. A raider charged, his blade gleaming. The soldier blocked, sparks flying, then drove him back with a strike that dropped him to the dirt. Another came from behind, but the soldier twisted, pain screaming through his muscles, and struck again. The camp roared with shouts and steel. Firelight painted the scene in flashes of red and gold. He was cut on his arm, blood warm against his skin. A blow sent him stumbling to one knee, his chest aching, but he forced himself up. His breath came heavy, but he roared through the pain, his weapon rising again. The raiders laughed no longer, their faces twisted in rage, but behind their anger was fear. They had expected an easy night, not a storm made of one man. The child cried out as a raider moved toward her, blade raised. The soldier's vision blurred, but when he saw that, something inside him snapped. He charged with a cry that shook the camp, striking the raider down before the blade could fall. The chain rattled as the child flinched back, but her eyes locked onto him. She saw not just a fighter, but a savior. The last raider came at him, stronger than the rest, armor thick, blade heavy. Their weapons clashed again and again, the sound echoing in the night. The soldier's arms trembled with each strike, his body begging to collapse. The raider shoved him back, knocking him to the ground. The world tilted, his chest heaved, his weapon almost slipped from his hand, but then he heard it, a small voice. Weak, trembling, but full of faith. The child whispered in her alien tongue something soft. He did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. She was calling for him. She believed in him. The soldier's hand tightened again. With the last of his strength, he rose. He met the raider's eyes, let out a cry that was part rage, part sorrow, part unbreakable will, and struck with all he had left. The heavy armor cracked. The raider fell. Silence followed. The soldier stood swaying, blood on his hands, wounds burning but alive. The camp was quiet now. The only sound was the faint crackle of the fire and the weak rattle of chains. He staggered toward the child. She looked up at him. Fear and hope mixed in her eyes. He dropped to one knee, his trembling hands reaching for the chains. One by one, he broke them. The metal fell to the dirt with a sound that felt louder than any victory horn. The child was free. For a moment, neither moved. Then she reached out, small hands clutching his torn armor. Her grip was weak, but it held more power than anything else that night. The soldier closed his eyes, breathing heavily, the weight of his promise heavy but fulfilled. He had fought not for orders, not for duty, but for her. And now, she was no longer a prisoner. She was his responsibility, his reason, his victory. The fire in the raiders' camp had burned low, its flames nothing more than glowing embers. The soldier stood among the silence of the dead, his body shaking from exhaustion. His armor was torn, his wounds burned, and his breath came in short, heavy gasps. Yet his eyes did not look at his own pain. They looked only at the child. She was free now, the chains lying broken on the ground. Her small body trembled, her legs too weak to carry her. She leaned against him, clutching at his side with fragile hands. Her eyes, though tired, were wide, with something he recognized instantly: trust. The soldier bent low and lifted her onto his back. She was light, far too light for what she should have been. The weight was nothing compared to the weight of his promise. He tightened his grip, adjusting her so she could rest her head against his shoulder. "Hold on," he whispered softly, though he knew she could not understand his words. "I'll take you home." The night stretched before them, endless and cruel. The wasteland waited, dark and merciless, but the soldier did not hesitate. Step by step, he walked away from the camp, carrying the child with him. The world around them was broken. Ash fell from the sky like black snow. Trees stood dead and twisted, their branches reaching like claws. Rivers were choked with debris, the water dark and bitter. Every sound of the wind carried the echo of war. The soldier's body begged him to stop. Every step sent waves of pain through his muscles. His wounds bled, soaking into his armor. His throat burned with thirst. His stomach ached with hunger, and his vision blurred more than once. But he would not stop. He could not. Each time his legs trembled, each time his strength threatened to leave him, he thought of the queen waiting in the ruins. He thought of her claws trembling as she whispered about her child. He thought of the tears that had filled her alien eyes. And he thought of the little voice on his back, soft and quiet, sometimes whispering in her tongue, words he did not understand but whose meaning was clear. She was calling for her mother. That was enough to keep him moving. During the day, the sun was hidden behind smoke, a dull red eye staring down at them. The heat pressed against his skin, heavy and cruel. The child slept often, her small breaths warm against his neck. Sometimes she would wake and whimper softly, but when she saw he was still carrying her, she would settle again, clinging to him tightly. At night, the stars tried to shine through the smoke. He made small fires where he could, using scraps of wood or broken parts of wreckage. The child would curl close beside him, her eyes reflecting the flames. She said little, but he saw in her gaze a quiet belief that he would not leave her. That belief weighed on him, but it also lifted him. It gave him strength he did not know he had. On the third day, a storm swept across the wasteland. Ash and dust filled the air, the wind howling like a wounded beast. The soldier wrapped his cloak around the child, shielding her with his own body as he pushed forward. The storm tore at his wounds, blinded his eyes, but still he did not stop. Each step felt like walking through fire, but each step also brought him closer to the Queen. There were moments when despair whispered in his mind. You will fall before you reach her. You will die here, and the child will be lost again. But he silenced that voice with every heartbeat. He would not let despair win. On the fourth night, as he sat by a weak fire, the child did something that shook him deeply. She reached out and touched his hand. Her small fingers pressed against his scarred skin. Then, in her soft, alien tongue, she spoke a word. He did not understand it, but he felt it. The way she said it, the way her eyes glowed faintly, it was a word of gratitude, a word of trust. The soldier bowed his head, his eyes burning. He did not cry often, but in that moment his chest ached with something greater than pain. He squeezed her hand gently, and for the first time in many years, he smiled. The journey was not over. The wasteland was still wide, the path still cruel, but the ruins where the Queen waited were closer now. He could almost hear her voice, almost see her trembling hands reaching out for the child, and he swore to himself with every step he took into the dark that he would not fail, because this was no longer just about a promise. It was about giving back what he himself had once lost. The soldier's legs trembled as he climbed the last ridge of broken stone. His back ached from carrying the child, his wounds throbbed with every breath, and his vision blurred from exhaustion. Yet when he reached the top and saw the ruins below, his heart found new strength. The Queen was there. She sat where he had left her, inside the shattered skeleton of her ship. Her body was bent low, her claws pressed against the cold metal floor. She had not moved far in days, her strength, too, broken to carry her, yet her head lifted often, her glowing eyes searching the horizon, waiting for a figure she feared might never return. And then she saw him. At first she did not believe her own eyes. A lone shape staggered down the ridge, carrying something small upon his back. For a heartbeat, she thought it was only a dream born from her desperate mind. But then the wind shifted, and she heard the sound. The soft clink of chains that were broken now, not binding. Her breath caught, her claws trembled. The soldier walked into the ruins, every step heavy but unyielding. Dust rose around his boots as he crossed the broken ground. At last, he stopped a few paces away, lowering himself carefully to one knee. His arms trembled as he lifted the child from his back and set her gently on the ground. The Queen's eyes widened. Her child stood, weakly at first, her legs uncertain. Then she saw her mother, and a sound broke from her lips. A cry, high and trembling, filled with relief. She stumbled forward, falling into the Queen's arms. The Queen caught her, pulling her close with a strength she did not know she still had. She pressed her crown-like head against the child, her claws wrapping around her small body, as if never to let go again. A cry tore from the Queen's throat. It was not the cry of a ruler, not the roar of a warrior. It was the cry of a mother, raw and full of love. The ruins echoed with the sound, a song of pain healed and hope restored. The soldier stood silent, watching. His body was broken, his mind weary, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. He had seen many sights in war, death, loss, hatred, but never anything like this. A mother reunited with her child. It was more powerful than any victory, more meaningful than any battle. The Queen lifted her head. Her eyes met his. They glistened, with tears, alien, shining, but tears all the same. For a long moment, no words were spoken. Only the silence of understanding filled the air. Finally, through the broken translator at her side, her voice cracked softly into human speech. Just 2 words. Human hero. The soldier's chest tightened. He was not used to such words. All his life he had been called many things: soldier, fighter, survivor. But never this. He gave a tired smile, small but real. He did not bow, did not speak. He only nodded once, as if to say, it was enough. The queen pressed her child closer, rocking her gently. The little one's eyes closed at last, safe in the warmth of her mother's embrace. Her trembling stopped. Her small breaths grew steady. She was home. The soldier turned then, stepping back toward the open wasteland. His promise was fulfilled. His strength was nearly gone, but he did not mind. He had carried her back through fire and shadow, through blood and despair. He had given what no one had given him long ago. As he walked away, the queen's voice rose once more, soft but filled with something greater than words. Gratitude, respect, a bond that no war could erase. He did not look back. He did not need to. He knew the child was safe. He knew the queen's eyes would never forget him. And he knew that for the first time in his life, he had done something greater than war. The wasteland stretched before him, endless and broken, but inside his heart, there was light. Because in a world where hate had ruled for too long, he had chosen something different. He had chosen to return a child to her mother, and that choice would echo louder than any battle.